What's the worst thing someone tried to correct you about something you're specialized at? My wife has a friend who studied zoology who once told me that cows can't run or jump. I grew up with them. I, more than once, had to run after or away from them after they had jumped a fence. The cows are freaking fast when they want to be. Our neighbors had a cow who learned how to kneel down and crawl across cattle guards. She roamed the area for years, couldn't be contained. Wrote software for a large, interactive art piece. It was presented in such a way that it encouraged self-discovery of how it was used, but it wasn't difficult and most people picked up on the main operation of it very quickly, as it should have been. There were 3 stations that interacted together but separated by some distance. I see some guy very flamboyantly operating the device. It created music, lights, and fire, and explaining how it works to a small crowd around him. I'm intrigued, so I walk over to hear him. He's figured it all out and basking in the adulation of those around him. But he's wrong. Like, way off. So, after listening a bit, I gently and politely point out how it differs from what he is saying. He looks around at his crowd and tells me I'm way off and don't get it, that I just don't understand. This is more perplexing because simple operation and observation contradicted what he was stating. Anyway, I again, politely, explained a bit more to further illustrate where he was wrong. He told me I just didn't know what I was talking about. I hesitated and considered just thanking him and walking away, but then thought better of it. I looked at him and told him I wrote the software for what he was doing, and had been writing and running it on my laptop at home every night for the last 6 months. The crowd's attitude changed. People thanked me, and I wandered off. It was weird how invested that guy was in being right and the center of attention. At least he was polite at the end. I work in lightning protection here in the States. I do the estimating and the designs for the largest company in the Southeast. Have for going on 7 years. Certified through our industry's certification company. The amount of engineers and architects that love to argue with me about the code is astounding. I live that code. Being I estimate and design systems, my main job is to know that code. The worst was the Army Corps of Engineers. We had a project that their designer designed that was in the bid package drawings. Pretty standard. Pick out the materials requested and ignore the incorrect design. That is how we bid it, won it, and designed it. This would have provided them with a fully certified system. In our business, a UL master label certification is as close to a requirement for every job as anything can be. 2 weeks after we submit our design, it comes back with a revised resubmit stamp and a very snarky demand from the Corps that we change our design to the one provided in the bid package. I went back and forth on email and calls with the engineers trying to explain to them that their system would not work, was potentially a dangerous hazard, and ultimately could not be certified or warranted. They came back basically with "We don't care what you say, we know better, do it." So I did. Designed exactly like they had and put a disclaimer on the drawing saying there would be issues and we were not responsible. A few months go by, it's installed and ready for certification. They call the inspector out and he fails it without even getting on the roof. The Army is P and tried to come back at us. I politely forward the countless email chains to the officer in charge. Now they scramble to get it up to code. As a consequence, it resulted in us issuing a change order to bring it up to code that was around 75% of the original cost of the project. God damn it. Wasted tax dollars via stupidity. I see it so much as a government contractor. I didn't specialize on it, but when I worked at the deli in my local grocery store, I had a guy come in asking for some sliced ham. I asked him if he wanted Black Forest ham, honey baked or mesquite ham. He looked at me and said it's not mesquite, it's mestique. I pointed at the sign and label on the actual effing ham that said mesquite ham, but he still corrected me. I gave up and gave him his dang mestique ham. This was a good 15 years ago and I'm still mad about it. My hometown is Mesquite. That cracks me up. I'm gonna start calling it Mystique. A new house gets built next door to mine, and shortly after the owners move in, they knock on my door to complain that my house is built too high. I explained that my house is built on flat ground and their builder has built their house lower and undercut my fence. The guy proceeds to give a long-winded spiel about how earthworks are done and my house is too high and I have to fix it. I then explain that I do earthworks for a living. have done the earthworks for 300 plus houses in my suburb alone, and around 1200 in the local area. I name his builder, site supervisor, engineer, the exact floor levels in the street, and the law that says that he has to pay to fix my fence. He still hasn't paid, and legal procedures are beginning soon. I got shut down by this actually. I was arguing with my cousin while we were in an old hydraulic elevator. I said the hydraulic elevators are slow, crap and have far more failures than cable elevators. The guy standing across from us laughs, shakes his head and says he's an elevator repairman. And that's not true at all. Shamed. Elevator knowledge, very up and down. My parents are Italian. I speak Italian, and I've had people in the US who are 1/4 Italian at best, or who once ate Italian food, correct me on the pronunciation of any number of things. Yeah, I've forgotten how to say a lot of things, so maybe I'm not a specialist per se, but sauce isn't called gravy in Italy, sorry. My friend and I went to Dapper Day at Disney last weekend, where people dress up in vintage wear. One of Disney's photographers asked my friend if she was Disney bounding, interpreting a Disney character, and she replied that she was simply a generic dress circa 1955. The photographer began telling us how she was really much more late 1940s, and that we may have researched it, but he lived through it, and next time we should look at a picture. We are both professional theatrical costumers whose strengths lie in historical costuming, and her dress was taken directly from a 1955 catalog. Further, based on his approximate age, and being generous that he may have aged well, this man was definitely not older than 5 in 1955. I'm a Harley mechanic, and I swear most Harley riders have to pretend they know everything about their bike. I don't even argue with them anymore. I just tell them what's up, and if they want to debate about it, I say okay and walk away. LOL. I know a guy who built his Harley entirely or almost entirely from spare parts. His party trick is to ask other enthusiasts what year model it is. The correct answer is all of them. You wouldn't believe the number of times people tried to tell me that people only become diabetic if they eat too much sugar, and insist they are right. I'm a type 1 diabetic, diagnosed at 14 months. Was I drinking soda from my bottles and using ring pops as pacifiers then? On how my dyslexia affected me. My own dyslexia, not the concept of dyslexia but my day-to-day functioning. I know when and how it impacts me, and the difference to forgetting my glasses and being unable to see things at a distance. I've a master's degree, and a lot of people refuse to believe I'm really dyslexic because I can read. People without their it constantly try and quote various laws about being able to order alcohol when out with parents. I work in a pub which is part of a chain. We're regularly tested for Challenge 21. No, I'm not handing you a pint when you can't prove you're old enough and wouldn't be willing to pay the £1,000 fine I'd receive. Oh boy, where do I begin? I'm a professional music producer. I've been for years. My productions get great reviews from people and are often singled out by music magazines and other industry professionals. People who know what they're doing are nothing but nice and supportive. But I get crap from salty bedroom guitarists all the fricking time. Seems like every time I produce a young band, there's this one guy there who thinks he knows it all because he watched a YouTube video. The bass knob on the amp should be set at 10, because 5 years ago I heard that Tremonti sets his bass knob at 10. There should be no effects or editing on the vocals, because Black Sabbath in the 70s didn't have vocal effects. Double tracking guitars? What the frick? Nirvana had one guitar player and they were the biggest band on the planet. We're recording only one take. Black Sabbath in the 70s didn't have vocal effects. Yeah, but they did have Ozzy frickin' Osbourne, and you ain't him. I'm not really specialized, but a Redditor tried correcting me about the geography of my country, Norway, claiming that it was very much flat like all the other Nordic countries, and he refused to believe me when I told him that it's the opposite and it's filled with mountains. I have worked in a tire garage for nearly 10 years and am female. I can't even count how many times people try to tell me how to do my job. No, you can't cross-rotate my tires. You will break a belt. The tires will explode. Sir, we haven't sold bias-ply tires in over 10 years. We only sell radial tires and the way I'm rotating them is specific to the drive axle of your vehicle. Or my personal favorite, sitting there as a customer lays into me for 30 minutes about how we sold them magnetic tires. I never had a nail in my tires until I bought your tires. I've had 3 repairs since I bought tires from you guys. This is a stunt to make money off of me. If only I knew how to make rubber magnetic, I'd be so rich doing all my free repairs. LOL, magnetic tires, that's a good one. Wow. That's why he wanted buyer supplies. He knew you guys magnetize the belts in those newfangled radial tires to make money off people. For a short time I was teaching in a school, and at the end of the year an inspector visited to go over the way I had corrected the final exams. He insisted that the answer to a particular question was not the one I said was correct. He was the one who had written the question. I argued with him that I was very sure that I knew what I was saying. I had written a thesis about this particular topic. It took a lot of effort not to punch him in the face. Well, you might have known the right answer, but he knew the answer that was supposed to be given. LOL. I'm a climber. People tell me to wear gloves all of the time. There is a form of climbing where gloves would be somewhat acceptable, although even then a bit questionable. But in free climbing bouldering you cannot wear gloves because your fingers actually allow you to grip onto smaller pieces of rock. I totally get you. Got asked that question too a few times and then offered the people to join me and wear gloves. One person joined me once and tried it seriously with those thin woolen gloves, and she realized she had been wrong. She is now my reference person if someone asks the question again. I had to leave our welding for this reason. I'm a welder on nuclear submarines with over 14 different X-ray welding qualifications at this company alone. I would constantly get into arguments with people who are new and have no real-world experience with welding. The amount of wrong information being thrown out left and right over there is insane. There are plenty of very knowledgeable folks there, but they are overshadowed by the ignorant. Yeah, it's one of the more amusing aspects of Reddit. Everyone sounds authoritative and experienced and there's no real way to know if that's not so. But once you know a topic, it's amazing how full of crap most people are. I'm an identical twin and a big biology nerd. I had someone insist that fraternal twins are paternal twins and explain why she'll have some BC they've leapfrogged through her husband's family. AWW, that's rough. Don't know how her husband's genes will get her to produce 2 eggs though. I was reading a fertility book the other day and I never realized, but identical twins isn't associated with family history genetics. My height. I'm 6 feet 10. Guy comes up and says he's 6 feet 10 so I must be like 7 feet. Nah, man. You're 6 feet 6 maximum. And then we went back and forth about that for a bit. Also had the other side of that coin where someone will ask how tall I am and I'll reply 6 minutes and 10 seconds and they just straight up won't believe me and will tell me I'm lying. Like, what? Why? What would I possibly stand to benefit? I studied history at uni and worked for a while as a tour guide in Prague, Czech Republic. I had a customer once on a walking tour of the city go really snarky with me because I called the river running through the city the Vltava. He declared to the whole tour that that wasn't its name. I asked him if he'd heard it referred to as the Moldau, as that was the German name for the river during the Habsburg era when German was the official language. But he said no, and was I stupid? The river was called the Danube. I pointed out to him that the Danube doesn't run through Prague, and asked if maybe he was thinking of Brno. No, he had definitely read in a guidebook that it was the Danube, and why the heck was he paying money for this tour if the guide didn't even know what the river was called? At which point another tourist in the group showed him her guidebook where it clearly said Vltava, then another showed him a map, and another showed him another guidebook, and so on, until the whole group had basically showed him what a twazza he was being. He didn't apologize, of course, but at least he shut up for the rest of the tour. I'll admit, I also thought that river was the Danube, but looking at the map now I see that it doesn't even run close to Prague. I wonder how people come to that misconception. Asked to do the rear brakes on a classic Vespa. I think it may have been a 200 rally, not sure. It was decades ago. So the owner and his pal turn up with the scooter. I loosen off and remove the rear rim and tire. Loosen the hub nut and go to put the rear rim and tire back on. Oh hey, wait a minute mate. What the f are you doing? I'm getting the hub off. Not like that, you're not. So I tell them I'm going for a cuppa and a smoke and I'll be back when they've removed the hub. 4 hours. 4 bloody hours they were at it. Hub wouldn't budge. Not 1 millimeter. Getting bored, I go back to them. Put the rim and tire on. Screw in and tighten 2 wheel bolts, and using a mallet hit 3 times in 1 point. Then 3 times 180 degrees opposite. Rinse and repeat 3 or 4 times. Whole rim tire hub assembly lifts off. I charged them 1 stroke to a day labor for a 30-minute job. I'm majoring in archaeology. I had a guy start talking to me about dinosaurs. I correct him and say it's a fairly common misconception, but paleontology and archaeology are 2 different fields and I'm studying humans, not dinosaurs. He doubles down and insists I need to know about dinosaurs because what do you do if you're digging up ruins and find a dinosaur fossil? Call a paleontologist? He smugly tells me I'll be useless in the field if I don't know about dinosaurs and I better start registering for paleontology courses and leaves. I still don't know about dinosaurs. My friend told me that she's taking an archaeology course next semester and was hyped to learn about dinosaurs. I told her that I didn't want to burst her bubble, but that archaeology was about people stuff, not dinosaur stuff. She said I did burst her bubble and that if I didn't want it I should have been quiet. I should have let her be excited, lol. A guy that considered himself to be a music maven tried to correct me when I mentioned Beethoven's 9th Symphony, Ode to Joy. He insisted that J.S. Bach composed it when, in fact, Bach never composed any symphonies, not to mention that Ode to Joy is one of Beethoven's most famous pieces. I used to work as an outdoor guide on one of the Channel Islands off the coast of Southern California. Once, I was hiking with a pair of women in probably their late 40s or early 50s. They were asking me all sorts of questions about the natural history of the island. Mostly simple stuff, but they had a lot of questions. Then one of them hit me with this gem. So, how often do you guys go out to feed the whales and dolphins? I was genuinely confused for a moment. What did she mean? I asked her. Well, you have to make sure all those whales get to eat. When do you go feed them? It must be expensive to have enough food for them all. This woman thought that every day, our boat captains would drive around the channel, tossing fish to dolphins and whales until they were all fed. I have no idea where she got this, considering she'd come over on that very boat. It took me a little while to politely convince her otherwise. I'm a food scientist, so this happens basically all the goddamn time. One person insisting that message gives her terrible migraines. She was eating pizza at that exact time. Someone insisting that you should drink apple cider vinegar to alkalize your body to prevent diseases. I point out that's an acid. He insists it's not. Apple cider vinegar. Another person telling me how agave nectar is so much healthier and how I should replace all the sugar I eat with it. I tell her it's just a fructose glucose mix and you might as well use corn syrup. She got really mad, like irrationally mad. There is so much misinformation about food that this is basically constant for me. I'm a knife maker. A friend tried to tell me that the curve on the katana was forged in no, it's make by differential hardness in the quench, and then tried to tell me that tempering a knife meant hardening it. I see that you actually studied the blade. So, Canadian lawyer here. I used to do primarily firearms law. I taught a course in firearms law at university. I've been consulted on it by lawyers. I've had judges tell other lawyers to phone me with firearms law questions. I had a law student telling me that I was oh so wrong about firearms law on a particular topic. Eventually they went and cited a particular case, which I politely advised them they were wrong about. They keep going on, talking about how just because I'm a lawyer and they're a student doesn't mean they're wrong. Meanwhile I'm just holding my tongue. Eventually someone else chimed in to be like, UHH, don't you know who that is? And the case you cited was a case he personally argued and won on. Satisfying AF. If a heaven exists, I think I'd just want to have it be a never-ending series of these moments where I'm the expert. I studied geology for some time and I was telling someone about how the area we live in is mostly limestone cause it used to be sediment that was on the ocean surface and they said that place we live is above ground now. It could have never been below sea level. Geoscience classes must not be doing too well. I went to school for geology for a bit. My grandma pointed to an area across the border in Mexico and said that when she was a kid, they'd go collect shell fossils from there. I got all excited and told her that made sense because this whole area was a big all-inland sea at one point. She said correct. During Noah's flood. I'm not religious, so I just nodded and walked away. I give planetarium shows, and at the end I hang around so that people can come talk to me, ask questions. Usually it's small children that want to tell me about their favorite planet or something equally cute, but there are always old dudes that wait around so they can tell me something wrong they noticed in the show. They're never correct. Most recently, during part of my show I put up a picture of the moon and the earth, and when I show it I point out that this picture is to scale, i.e. the size and distance between them is accurate. After the show, this guy was adamant that to scale is meaningless unless you give a conversion. 1, 2, 5, 672. I tried to make a joke a couple times to defuse the situation, but he wouldn't leave. It was so hard not to tell him he was wrong. A friend of ours tried arguing with my wife, telling her she had her facts wrong about autism, diagnosing it, etc. She's a doctor of psychology at one of the top children's hospitals in the world and she specializes in autism. Some guy gal crawled up my butt just yesterday about medical tropes having actual merit in emergency situations. I'm an EMT, so that sticks out. I don't get corrected all that often, more like customers who feel compelled to explain to me how to do my job before they let me get to work doing it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.